Hamza just mentioned is like, do environment artists have to model every component in the environment, and how often do you use 3D assets from Quixel or any other 3D asset sites?
Sure. Yeah. So at some point, some environment artists will typically, there has to be an environment artist that models something, whether it be you or through an outsourced partner or through, resources like you have like megascans. And I think this is a pretty common question I actually get in my class a lot is like, oh, is it okay to use megascans in your environments or use like resources like that? And I would say absolutely. Like, it would be like me saying if I was using Photoshop, I don't want to use Painter because that's cheating. There's always going to be advances in the industry, and with tech, it always comes really quick advances. And so sometimes people get a little uncomfortable with how quickly that comes. But if you were to work in a studio scenario, you have to think about it. What are they going to do if you started a studio and you're working as an environment artist? They're not going to say, yeah, let's just make everything from scratch and blow the entire budget in like 2 weeks. They're going to be like, let's just be as smart as we can. Let's use resources that we can. Let's make the assets that we want to be unique. And it's going to be like kind of a lot of flexibility with understanding that process as to like every studio is going to be different, but most studios want to like exercise and use as many resources as they can, but they also want you to build the really important aspects of the scene that really kind of sell.
If you had a day job, what would be advice for someone who's going to be looking at taking your course?
Sure.
So I know it's going to change.
Yeah, of course. So it all depends on you. So in the class, I've structured it so it's basically like each assignment per week is kind of the bare minimum to understand the fundamentals of that week. So it's say, for instance, if it was lighting, I'd give you an assignment as to be like, here's what you need to do to understand these fundamentals. Beyond that, it's up to you and how far you want to push your scene. You want to push yourself to get more achieved. So if you're like, we've had over the course of the last 4 years since I've run this class, we've had stay-at-home parents. We've had people that have working day jobs. We have people that are working night jobs. We have people that are caring for their family. We have all sorts of people that have their own day-to-day lives. And so I wouldn't say that I've ever seen anyone come in and be like, oh, this is completely impossible to achieve this class. It's just a matter of really just seeing how much you want to push yourself. But I would say the core fundamentals of the class are very achievable each week, even if it's just.
Yeah, I think there were some people like wondering if you were going to touch a little bit on the pipelines as well. That's probably what the class is going to be about.
Definitely, yeah. So the class is. Yeah, the class is tons and tons of pipeline. So it really goes from like literally beginning with the block out, understanding how you transition that block out into final modular pieces, then taking those modular pieces and texturing them, using those trim workflows and pipelines and tilables, understanding draw calls and how that affects your performance, and then establishing that scene and then really creating that telling that story. And it's like, I think it's all those things are important, but it really is really important to start understanding what kind of story you're trying to tell. So I think this is that's why I really like visual storytelling, because it's really the core fundamental of what you're trying to do. I've had many students that have rushed into my class, and they said at the beginning, they're like, I'm not quite sure what story I'm trying to tell. I'm not going to think about that for now. I'm just going to make all these assets. And then without fail, week 5 comes and they're like, oh man, I should have thought about what story I'm trying to tell, like what I'm trying to even convey, like what is I'm trying to do in this scene, because you'll really find yourself lost without this kind of core fundamental of establishing what the scene is going to be.
That's a good point to make. And I think it definitely, managing scope is probably the single biggest challenge most artists have, including myself. So
definitely.
I totally get it.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that a lot of students will say about how I kind of run the course is that I'm extremely, almost overly honest about what I suggest to you as to get the best out of your scene. So sometimes if you say, oh, I want to make a castle with a dragon and like this battle going on in the background and mountains and fire and lava and all this stuff, and I'll be like, no, let's talk about this space. This is a space we should focus on, and then what we could do is we can work out from there. So really concentrating on establishing those core fundamentals, understanding first, building a solid scene that if you had to put that in your portfolio by itself, it would still stand without all these additional elements. And then at that point, if you feel like the need to continue to push out further into adding those extra elements you talked about at the beginning, that's the time you would take those core fundamentals and make that something